it's a time to decide, do we run the technology? Does the technology run us? Are we going to continue to have elections that mean anything? Are we going to continue to think for ourselves, or are we going to just let the biggest tech companies decide who wins every election from now on? I look at search, and I look at Google News, and I see what it's doing, and I see Google executives go to Congress and say that it's not manipulated, it's not political, and I'm just so sure that's not true. I think the big problem that we have today is there's an ambiguity about whether tech is neutral or whether it's biased. And, I think as someone with a PhD in computer science and 5 years of working at one of the world's top computer science companies, I don't see any doubt that it's very politically biased.
They may be able to stop one man, but they can't stop all of us. Your courage will be contagious, and it will awaken a sleeping giant. Be a catalyst for change. Be brave. Do something.
I don't see any doubt that it's very politically biased.
Bias in big tech is big news. Just yesterday, the Justice Department launched an antitrust review. 2 weeks ago, I was at the White House summit to talk about big tech with the president and other influencers. Project Veritas investigations have been featured in congressional hearings in both the Senate and the House. Our momentum is growing, and today we have another Google insider, this time out of the shadows, a brave man who is breaking the wall of silence to go on camera as a current Google employee and expose a troubling truth.
My name's Greg Coppola. I'm a senior software engineer. I work on artificial intelligence and the Google Assistant. Yeah, overall, I'm very concerned to see big tech and the big media merge basically with a political party, with the Democrat Party.
Greg Coppola works in Google's New York office. He says from his insider's view, the reality of Google's political bias is undeniable.
Don't have a smoking gun. I've been coding since I was 10. I have a PhD. I have 5 years of experience at Google, and I just know how algorithms are. They don't write themselves. We write them to do what we want them to do. Mm-hmm. And you can use machine learning, but even then, you can get the results of machine learning to come out the way you want them to. It's just a tool that we control. I look at search, and I look at Google News, and I see what it's doing, and I see Google executives go to Congress and say that it's not manipulated, it's not political, and I'm just so sure that's not true.
Late last year, Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai, was one of those executives.
I lead this company without political bias and work to ensure that our products continue to operate that way. To do otherwise would be against our core principles and our business interests.
Google CEO Sundar Pichai goes before Congress in December, testifies under oath that the algorithms are politically unbiased. Now, you work on data sets that feed certain algorithms at Google. Based upon what you know and what you've observed, are Google's algorithms unbiased?
Well, first of all, I report to Sundar, of course, and I have a great deal of respect for him as a manager. I work on the Google Assistant, which really doesn't have a political bias. I think it's, ridiculous to say that there's no bias. I think everyone who supports anything other than the Democrats, anyone who's pro-Trump or in any way deviates from what CNN and the New York Times are pushing, notices how bad it is. I think maybe in his mind he can justify it through some redefinition of what the word political is. But I think if you look every day and with every query for, say, for example, Donald Trump, Google News is really an aggregator of just a handful of sites, and all of those sites, really are vitriolically against President Trump. which I would really consider to be interference in the American election.
And the Google CEO did testify under oath that Google's algorithms are politically unbiased. Was he lying?
I mean, lying is a strong word. I definitely don't think it's true. I think what they do is somehow put an extreme bias on certain sites. Like, for example, CNN is the most commonly used source in Google News. 20% of all searches for Donald Trump, all results for Donald Trump are from CNN. And when that's the entire internet of millions of sites. CNN is something that Donald Trump and a lot of his supporters, I think, would call very fake news. So one has to wonder how it really got to be that way.
Coppola says he saw all this coming to pass during the 2016 presidential election.
Well, I started in 2014. 2014 was an amazing time to be at Google. We didn't talk about politics. No one talked about politics. It was just a chance to work with the best computer scientists in the world, the best facilities, the best computers, and free food. I think as the election started to ramp up, the angle that the Democrats and the media took was that anyone who liked Donald Trump was a racist, even a Nazi. And that got picked up everywhere. I mean, every tech company, everybody in New York, everybody in the field of computer science basically believed that. A small number of people do work on making sure that certain news sites are promoted. And in fact, I think it would only take a couple out of an organization of 100,000, to make sure that the product is a certain way. But actually, on a day-to-day basis, I think probably a lot of people know that I like Donald Trump and they don't really care.
Yes, Greg Coppola is a rare bird. He's a Google engineer, a New Yorker who was raised in Canada, who likes Donald Trump.
I grew up in Canada as a teenager in the 90s. It was a very free environment. I really appreciated that. I'm someone who enjoys questioning the norm. I'm someone who likes to ask, why something's happening. And I think we should continue to teach kids to do that. And I think the system, the way that Google works, the way the Democrats work, the way all their allies in the media work, they really don't want a lot of questioning of anything. They really just want to call people names to get them to toe a certain line. And I think it's a harmful, dark view of society, and I would like to see tech that just supports human freedom, free thought.
According to Coppola, big tech's political agenda is dangerous in large part because it is hidden.
Well, I think we had a long period of 10 years, let's say, where we had search and social media that didn't have a political bias. And we kind of got used to the idea that the top search result at Google is probably the answer. And Robert Epstein, who testified before Congress last week, looked into it and showed that, the vast majority of people think that if something is higher rated on Google search than another story, that it would be more important and more correct. And, we haven't had time to absorb the fact that tech might have an agenda. I mean, it's something that we're only starting to talk about now. That's why I'm talking to you.
Adding weight to Coppola's concern was the Senate testimony of Dr. Robert Epstein, a highly respected researcher, scientist, and interestingly, a Democrat. He told the Senate Judiciary Committee that Google and big tech's political bias could have a significant impact in the upcoming presidential election.
And looking forward, if I understood your testimony correctly, you said in subsequent elections, Google and Facebook and Twitter and big tech's manipulation could manipulate as many as 15 million votes in a subsequent election?
In 2020, if all these companies are supporting the same candidate, there are 15 million votes on the line that can be shifted without people's knowledge and without leaving a paper trail for authorities to trace.
But in any event, most people's job is not political and doesn't involve politics. I mean, there's a vast number of systems, and a lot of them have nothing to do with politics, like processing natural language.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would say that Google actually, in terms of the assistant, is taking much longer to build the assistant than it would otherwise need to, because there is such a respect at Google for privacy and for user data. And I hope you leave this in, and I hope people realize that there is really, I would say as an insider at Google, there is a lot of interest put in taking care of people's data. And conversely, it means that the list of reputations, of mappings from news site to some number representing their credibility is probably something I can't access.
So why did you decide to come to Project Veritas?
Well, I think that you guys have done a lot of good reporting on a variety of topics, and I think, some of the reporting about Google, some people might not be too happy about, but overall, I do think it's a credible news organization. Well, I think we're just at a really, important point in human history. I think for a while, we had tech that was politically neutral. Now we have tech that really, first of all, is taking sides in a political contest, which I think, anytime you have big corporate power merging with political parties, it can be dangerous. And I think more generally, we have to just decide now that we kind of are seeing tech use its power to manipulate people. It's a time to decide, do we run the technology? Does the technology run us? I think the big problem that we have today is there's an ambiguity about whether tech is neutral or whether it's biased. And, I think as someone with a PhD in computer science and 5 years of working at one of the world's top computer science companies, I don't see any doubt that it's very politically biased. And I know not everybody is a programmer, so I just kind of want to explain it to the non-programmers. Just the same way that, someone who doesn't know about wine might need to be told by a sommelier, or the way someone who doesn't know about cars might need to be told by a mechanic what's really going on. I just want to say to all the non-programmers that I really don't buy the idea that big tech is politically neutral, and I think we need to start incorporating that into whatever strategy we use to have a democracy going forward. Are we going to continue to have elections that mean anything? Are we going to continue to think for ourselves, or are we going to just let the biggest tech companies decide who wins every election from now on?
Google did not respond to our request for comment on this story.
Greg Coppola may lose his job that he loves and is well paid to do. But he came forward because he believes the American people need to know the truth about what is going on at Google. At Project Veritas, we are committed to telling these stories, to emphatically protecting those who wish to remain in the shadows, but at the same time, leak us documents and information. And for those brave insiders who do step into the light, we praise you. Remember, this is about the preservation of democracy, but that requires brave people, citizens, coming forward. And the big tech companies can't deny and can't stop an army of whistleblowers.